well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today or this afternoon. I know it's been a long day, a long couple days for a lot of you, so I just really appreciate it. I'm going to dive right into this content. I'm going to make it worth your while is my plan. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about Edge Animate and animating with web standards, CSS, HTML, things like that. Who in here actually has downloaded Edge Animate? I assume you guys are a pretty educated audience. So a couple of you. Okay, well, cool. You guys are going to be asking me the hard questions, right? Since you've already downloaded it, that's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into this in a second. My name is Paul Trani. There's my email address. Even beyond today, if you guys have any questions, let me know. ptrani@adobe.com. I'd be happy to help you out because it's my job, all right? So by all means, let me help you. And I guess I have a picture of me when I was a kid because I still like to play. I'm like a designer at heart, kind of a developer by force of will more than anything, but I like to create things, okay? And I will use whatever it takes to create things and just to make cool things happen. I'm here to impress people, I guess. I have low self-esteem, so I'm looking to impress people apparently. Who knows why? But nonetheless, I could imagine most people in here are, more developer-oriented. And I don't want you to think that Edge Animate is one, just for designers, and two, just for animation, okay? Because it can do more than that. We make tools that ultimately make your life easier is our goal. And if we're not doing that, if we're not making these tools for you guys and not meeting your needs, we're not doing our job. So let me know even, when it comes to feedback on making this product better, because we just launched Edge Animate 1.0 probably about 2 weeks ago. But again, I throw up this shirt. It's like, which are you designer, or you developer? It's like whichever shirt you think is funnier is what you kind of, you might tend to lean towards. So anyways, but it's for both audiences, everybody in the room. But it's interesting if you start to look at HTML, and I won't go into all the history, but I think, for a lot of, say, designers and people that were doing high-end graphics, you were working in, I said Flash. You were working in Flash a couple years ago, right? You were working in it. Whether you like to admit it or not, you were working in Flash, and it was awesome. It let you do everything. Obviously, we're in a different world these days, but I still want to see my content everywhere, and I'll speak to that. Actually, just by a show of hands, I could be totally wrong. Who in here uses or has used Flash in the past? Okay, good. So like a majority of you have. If you've been in the industry longer than, 5 years, I think, you're going to be working in Flash. So, you have to face the blue square, you have to adjust, you have to start to really dive into code. If you're a designer, definitely, whether it's, CSS3, HTML5, JavaScript. And that's what you end up doing. If you want to make animations these days, it's using those technologies, writing some code, and magically you get this nice little click me button. And we can look at these simple tasks and say, how can we make this easier for you, okay? And that's what Edge Animate does. Takes a lot of this writing of code and refreshing content out of the way. Okay, so that's what Edge Animate does. If we take a look at it closer, of course, since it's web standards, it's going to work seamlessly across modern browsers. It's going to allow you to create accessible content, which is great. It's intuitive. It's easy to use. It won't take you guys long. Like, I'm going to show it to you, and you should feel empowered by the end of this. Be like, okay, I can do this. This is going to be really straightforward, and I think it is. And again, it helps bridge that gap, wherever you're at in the timeline from designer developer, allows you to work together better. This is just some of the latest stuff, and if I can talk a little bit about Edge, it once was called Edge, and now it's Edge Animate. But Edge, we've had these certain previews over the past, it feels like 2 years. And with the release of Animate 1.0, we've had all these new developments with symbols, with web fonts, all sorts of things. But I don't like showing you guys these bullet points. It's like bullet points are boring. I'd rather just show you what it can do, regardless of whether you're a designer or developer. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take this idea, like 3 projects that I'm going to work on. Before I do that, just to kind of show you what it can do, is I'm just going to jump out here and just show you a quick example of Edge Animate. What can be made with this? So this is Patrick Williams. It's his portfolio made with an early preview of Edge Animate. But you can jump in here. You could start to filter this, say by web design, and highlight those products. Print design, but you can see how this ultimately works. Let's even zoom it down a little bit. But I'm basically highlighting that content, and you can click and watch it spin and do all this fancy stuff. This looks, again, it looks like Flash, let's face it. I'd like to create these compelling experiences when I need to as well, okay? And I will get to this later as well, but Edge Animate is free. Edge Animate 1.0 is free. So that's the one thing you need to know. You could go to Creative Cloud right now if you had an internet connection. I know it's kind of slow here, but if you had an internet connection, you can go to creativecloud.com, our site, which is our membership service. So you pay $50 a month and you have access to everything. I'm not here to sell anything to you. I'm just saying you just go and just like you log into Vimeo or Facebook, you just log in with your email, your password, and you can download Edge Animate right there, okay? There's even some other cool tools like Edge Code, some other things, but that's where you'd get it. You can jump in and download it today. Okay, so you were inspired, you have it downloaded, it's on your desktop now. Now let's go ahead and see how it works as we open it up, okay? First of all, we're greeted by these in-app lessons, which I've never been particularly impressed with, but I like how we've done it here. I think we've executed it really well when it comes to these quick lessons. So I'm just going to go through each one of these. No, I'm not going to go through each one of these guys. No, we don't need to do that. We're going to go to File, New. Because what are you going to do? You're going to forget those in-app lessons. You're going to create a new file and say, okay, this is cool. And you're going to start to take a closer look. You're like, okay, what does that say? Well, that's an HTML file that it creates. It doesn't create any sort of binary file format. It's actually an HTML page I will be editing, okay? And it's going to allow me to create HTML, some animation using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So from there, I can see that it's called HTML. I can save it out, and I'll just save it and call it index, okay? And now I can start creating things in here if I want to, okay? So right up here at the top, just like you'd expect in any program, you have a certain number of tools that you can use. So you can use this rectangle tool. So you'll dive in here and you'll start to draw. You'll draw, say, a box. And what this is this is a div that's being created. So we basically are animating divs. We can see it over here, and we could call it my header. Whatever we want. Doesn't matter, but I'm pointing out that that's a div, and that's what's being created, okay? I can start to control it visually. Again, I like this, being able to control this visually, its position, its size. Coming over here to the Properties panel, I can manipulate it as well over here. But this is the part I like, because I want my content to be flexible. I don't know, as far as it being responsive, I want to make sure it always fits on the screen just right within my browser. So I can come in here and say, hey, you know what, all these hard-coded numbers, not a fan. Let's go ahead and make sure it is always 8% from the left edge. And also from the top, make sure it's 32%. I can even come in here and change the width and the height, but basically it's going to be scalable now, okay? So I can also even make sure the canvas is scalable. But in general, what I've done is I made sure this content's scalable. I can grab this marker up at the top, and I can see that this content is scalable and flexible, okay? And that's what I want, but I still want to be able to create in here. I'm creating more of a responsive design. I can change the color and do the obvious, okay? You guys can figure this out. If you've worked with Photoshop or any of these programs, it's pretty easy to get squared away. Coming down here, you know, it's not cool these days unless you round the corners. Well, I can round the corners as well and make that really easy just like that. Okay, I'm visually manipulating these properties, and that's what I want to do. In fact, as I roll over it, take a look. It says that CSS border, top left radius, you know, top right. It's giving me all those CSS properties. So when you roll over these different items, it'll expose that code to you so you know what's being written. Okay, easy enough. I can draw that, I don't know, that gorgeous rectangle. I'm bored to death. This is not good. I want to liven this up some. So what would you normally do? Is you'd probably go grab some graphics. So I could come out here and take any sort of web graphic, a PNG file, a JPEG, and drop it on in and start to position this content. So I'm visually working right in here. Okay, and you can see it wraps these in a div, so I have control over them. Okay? And you'll start to notice some issues, such as this text is overlapping the watch. Well, you can control that in your Elements panel. So I can say, you know what? For this tech and trends, this title, I'm going to move that down. Okay, now it's behind that watch. Okay? All right, so this is my project. I'm starting to get it squared away. I can import graphics. I'd say this is looking good. I need to bring this to life ultimately. I'm going to drop in some text, in fact. Let's come in here and add some text. So this project's about sort of the 1980s. Did anybody have one of these watches, by the way? I don't know if anybody did, right? Who still has one of those watches? Go look down. Do you have it? You better. No, it's kidding. It's actually cool because it's kind of like the hipster thing to have nowadays. So it actually is kind of cool to have one of these watches. So nonetheless, I can come in here, and you guys who raised their hand were actually on the cutting edge back in the day, for sure. Okay. Nowadays, it's the iPod Nano that has the watch band that sticks to your wrist. But nonetheless, I dropped in a font. You guys aren't impressed, and neither am I, because we need to go beyond these fonts as well. And me as a designer, I want that full control. So I want to add a font. Okay, so in here, I can jump in and add a font. So I want to add a web font. Now, you guys are probably familiar with this. You can jump out and go to Typekit or Google Fonts, whatever the case may be. Use that embed code right here and place it right in there and start to use or have access to these fonts now. So I have the embed code that points to basically these fonts. I can pick a font from my type kit here. I can take this Kegger font, as you can see right here, tells me how to use it, which is just says, hey, you know what, type this in and you'll have it. And that's exactly what I can do, is drop it right in there and add that font. Okay, and now you can see what it does. It not only shows me, first of all, what was just added, but the system fonts and then the font I've just added. Okay, so visually being able to see this. Okay, visually scaling this up. I'm just doing a click and drag to increase that font. And that's what I want to do, is be able to work, visually, just like that, and position everything accordingly. All right. So far so good. I can start to, make sure everything is scaling just right, which is what I'm doing now, like that. All right, there it is. All right, this isn't going to win any awards, but it's a step in that direction, So as you can see, I didn't actually reestablish the position, but you can see how it scales all that content, okay? Pretty easy, pretty straightforward to do. Let's go beyond this. In fact, you guys are probably curious. I did actually run it in my browser. Let's run it in my browser again. Let's actually fix that issue as far as its position and size. All right, so let's run that. So that's working a little better, and I can always fix that if I want to. But let's open up our developer tools just so you can kind of see what's going on. We can see my content right there. It's getting scrunched a little bit, and I can always fix that. But from there, you can start to see the code that's being generated right down here. You can see that this is CSS. I can start to take a look at all of this content, stepping through it. Here's my header, and you can see that this is CSS that you could always change if you want to. All right, so this gives you a quick preview of what was generated. I can take a look, again, in the folder that I was dealing with. Here's the content that was generated, okay? I've been working on this HTML. This file, don't let it concern you at all. It's just a file that tells me where the timeline marker is, what color the timelines are for those different items. It's all based on sort of Edge Animate. It's not really needed because in the end, this HTML file is what's being used. All right, guys, I'm going to open this up, and I know you guys are. Is anybody surprised that I opened this up in Dreamweaver? Because you know what? I work for Adobe. All right, in case you're wondering. But, huh? Yeah, I do have brackets. I was going to use brackets. I know they showed it off earlier. I would love to, right? So yes, I can use brackets. But overall, I'm going to open this up. You can see, yeah, I could totally use brackets, but you can see the different items right in here. Everything from the different DOM elements, you can see right in here, JSON is what's being used. But if you take a look, it starts with this HTML file, and it creates basically all of the items based on this preloader. So if I scroll down, it's going to load in this index edge and the edge actions. So all my content is going to be in this edge.js file, and then my actions will appear in here as I start adding interactivity to it. But if you start to look at it, it starts to seem pretty darn straightforward. You can see the different items that are created, everything from my header, the tech trends graphic, where it's positioned. You can see that that's relative, and I can control any of this by manipulating it accordingly. But I did mention that I wanted this content to also be searchable as well. Okay? And that content is dynamically being created by JavaScript, and those various DOM elements are being built. But I can actually make this actually static if I want to, and searchable if I go into publish settings. Okay? So I can publish this content as static HTML if I want. There's additional things I can do. So I can publish this for even older, say, IE browsers using Google Chrome Frame is what it will default to, so it will play that content. And I can even load the, say, jQuery frameworks by CDN if I want to. But with that checked, I can just make sure that's saved. I can publish it out. And it puts all of those items in this web folder. I feel like I have an extreme echo. But nonetheless, it's created all of these graphics right here. And from there, I can open up using brackets, otherwise known as Edge code, which you can download. So brackets is the open source version. Edge code is our version where we can do additional things when writing code. Like we have a color picker. Web fonts is another thing, but since somebody mentioned it, I'm going to go ahead and use it. So jumping in here, just to show you what's being generated, I will open up that particular folder. And you can see right in here the different divs that were dynamically being created. It actually just has them in this static file. So you can see how it says 1980s techie, for instance, and then my other items that are created. So that's your static HTML that's generated. Pretty straightforward, Overall, that's what gets generated. And it all seems to make sense to me. So, all right. Again, let's move beyond this, because you guys probably aren't particularly impressed yet. I know I'm not. I'd like to bring this to life a little more. I can start to add more elements and create what I want, like I'm doing now. But I want to go beyond this content, and it being static, I want to bring it to life. So in order to do that, it's really just a matter of selecting the item. And if you guys hear anything I say right now, you need to press this button right here. Auto keyframe mode. If you don't have this on, it's not going to animate. But basically, when I turn that on, whenever I move that object or change it, it's automatically going to add keyframes. Okay? So if we take a look, say for instance, at this text, which is 1980s, that's what's selected, I can turn on auto keyframe mode. And now when I move it, watch the timeline, it generates that keyframe. So if I start to move it and rescale it, whatever the case may be, it starts generating all those keyframes automatically. Okay? And that's what I want. Generate these positions. So I can have it start maybe right here on top of the watch. And then I can scrub my timeline in about 1 second and then move it into position. Watch what happens when I let go. It creates that transition, as you can see right there. From 36% clear over to 12% as it gets closer to the edge. So you can see that slide out just like that. That's the only property I've manipulated. So now I can start to have fun with this. It's like, okay, well, have techie start in the middle. Make sure that's turned on. You know, move it accordingly. You can see the keyframe, the initial keyframe's created. Scrub in 1 second, and then move this into place like that. Okay? You know, notice how it's a little higher, and I'd actually want that lined up, okay? But I don't want it to generate keyframes. So again, I'll just turn off auto keyframe mode. Okay, so I'm turning that off, and now I can move it down. So it's not going to automatically add keyframes and screw up my animation. Okay, now I can turn it back on. But nonetheless, you can see that content slide out. Let's do some more fun things. For instance, this watch, I want it to be on top. I can move that to the top. I can start to animate it. Maybe it starts out small. I can manipulate, you know, whether it's the size or position or scaling, but I can have it start small like that. And again, auto keyframe mode is turned on. I can make it small, and then I can go 1 second in and bring this back to 100%. Okay, so it starts small and it comes out just like that. I'm hitting that space bar and you can see how that moves. Okay, not bad. I still need it to be much more slick overall, so if you guys could just watch me as I work. I could turn on auto keyframe mode for this, maybe start with it at 0% opaque and bring it up to about 100%, and that can fade in. Okay, so you can see how that goes. And last thing I'm going to do for this animation, again, this is your introduction to Animate, is I don't like how this linear easing is going on. It's a straight animation, that transition, and it stops in the end. So give me more flavor. Like, let this watch, I want this watch to kind of bounce in. Okay, let it do something fun. Well, again, for those two transitions, I can adjust the easing. So I can say, hey, you know what? On the ease out, I can have it slow down. Better yet, on the ease out, maybe it does a bounce. Okay, so we could try the bounce, for instance. Again, visually being able to see that and then running it. Okay, it bounces really straightforward. And this is where I start to have a lot of fun, because I can take these elements like the text and I can make them ease out if I want to, nice and easy, and have a little more fun with how everything moves. All right, pretty straightforward. You guys are, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, right? Hopefully you guys can, like, if you haven't downloaded it, you can dive right in and start to manipulate anything. In fact, notice how I'm still on that HTML file. You could take your own HTML content, open it up in Edge, and add animation to it, okay? So by all means, try it, open it up. We could still take a look at the code, but it's going to be animating these various transitions. But let's go beyond this. I want to show you a couple other really cool things, because I need to get into interactivity as well, okay? So writing JavaScript and doing different things. So let me do one more thing with this little guy right here, okay? I could take him, and I really want to have all these little bursts. Since we're talking about the 80s, I want to create this animation, and I want to make it reusable. Well, I could take any object and I can convert it to a symbol, okay? So if I convert it to a symbol, what does it do? It actually gives me an independent timeline, just like those of you that know Flash, like it would in Flash. So here's my new symbol. Let's just call it burst. I'll click OK. So here he is now. In fact, if I double click on him, I'm now inside of stage, inside of that burst symbol, okay? So now I can have fun. Look at my timeline. Oh, it's nice and fresh. I could do whatever I want in here. In fact, turning that on, adding some animation. Maybe it starts out at 10, really small, and goes up to, maybe over the course of 2 seconds, it goes up to 100%, like that. In fact, again, let's do the fun bounce. Or elastic. How about elastic? Let's see what elastic looks like. See, that's nice and easy, and it slows down pretty fast when I select that one. Okay, so that's a symbol or animation inside of a symbol. In fact, if we take a look over here at my library, first of all, here's the elements that are actually going to be in my images folder. If I look on my desktop, that's where it will be. But you can see right there, there's my symbols, my burst. Okay? Even my fonts, anything that I've used will actually appear in this nice library. So I can take that burst, say, hey, you know what? Bring it in. Bring in that burst, bring in this burst right here, and start to have fun with it. And again, I'll just move these to the background like that. In fact, let's run this now. Oh, that's scaling is horrible. There we go. But again, I'll just refresh this. You can see that nobody believes that I got an art degree in here, but I did. Okay? Let's face it. I need to move past this, really. But hey, this is the 80s, guys. Let's just imagine we were back then, 1985. You guys would be like, that is so awesome, right? But you can see how all those animations play. And you can start to control things at different times as well. Okay, so I'm gonna get into this, and I'm gonna jump to my other project that I have going on. But this object, I can select it and say, hey, you know what? I don't want you to appear yet. You're appearing way too soon with everything else. In fact, you know what? You shouldn't always be on. In fact, just turn on at this point in time. So if I look in my timeline, I could be about 1 second in for this object, and I can say, you know what? You happen to be burst 3, I'm going to change you to on. So you're just going to turn on at this point in time. Look at my timeline. It says, okay, I'm off, I'm off, I'm off, and I'm on. Okay? That's how that works. I'm off, and then I'm on there. Okay? And that's how that works. So it's nice being able to, and this is huge understanding how this works, because otherwise you're pushing things off the stage, and it just gets really messy. So you need to know how to turn things on when you need them on, and adjust those keyframes accordingly. So we have the first one comes in, that second one, and that third one. But it's playback, it's like always playing. Okay? So if you notice as I scrub through, even that second one that comes right there, he's already been playing, he's just been turned off. So I want to say, hey, for you, you know what? Your playback, you need help. You need to play from the very beginning. Okay? So that's all I'll do. Again, this is the easiest way to do it. Adding that in, it's going to play it from the very beginning right there. Okay? Again, for this guy right here, this burst 2 doing the same thing. Play from there. Okay? So I've actually just added some JavaScript, and you can see that bounce. All right, a couple more things. Because I'm here to use Edge Animate to bring something to life, and brings it to life for the first second. And I want to have these bursts kind of constantly going, okay? So in order to do that, what I'll do is I'll come in here. I'll say, hey, you know what? For this symbol, I'll just double click on it. So I'm inside the burst symbol. And I was controlling the timeline a second ago, but you can add JavaScript to the timeline as well. So it automatically plays. It goes like that. And then it stops right here. And what I want it to do is play in reverse and then play again. So you can add JavaScript to your timeline by inserting a trigger. So right here, let's insert that trigger. I've clicked there. It opens up this trigger panel. And you can see right in here, maybe you know what to do. Maybe you'd write help me. I don't know. But we can get rid of that comment altogether, and you'll see some handy code snippets right over here. So I can say, hey, you know what? Play in reverse. Clicking that, perfect. Play in reverse on the timeline. It's that simple. If I take a look right down here, those of you who are familiar with Flash, you start to see this resemblance. Like, okay, that's on the timeline. I see what's going on. It's going to play it in reverse. It's going to come back over here. So I'm just going to add another, basically another keyframe of code that just says play. Okay, so now it's going to bounce back and forth. That's what I want. Now if I run this, you can see they bounce in, and then they go away at different rates. So now I have something more fun and entertaining. Controlling that timeline with JavaScript. You saw how I added a code snippet. Okay, so that's your crash course in Edge Animate. I'm going to take this to the next level. Okay, that will like blow your mind. Wait, no, go ahead. What you got? The only thing you have to do, and the reason mine's a little funky, is because I didn't turn on, say for instance, these objects. I can select them, and I can, as far as its width and height, it's a matter of hitting this button right here. Actually, I take that back. I don't know. Let me just take a look here. Just grabbing in right there, selecting this object. I should be able to control the width and height, but usually if I want to change anything to be scalable or positioned dynamically, like how everything's kind of stretching and stuff and contracting, it's flipping this switch. It says, hey, you know what? I won't be 75 pixels from the side. I'm going to be 13% from the side. Oh, I did. In fact, if you do want to see, if I click the stage, because the stage is just one big div. But right in here, see the stage says it's at 100%. So that's what I did earlier on. I said, hey, you're at 100%. Now control my items, have them scale and move depending on, you know, the width of the stage or height of the stage. So yeah, no, those are good questions. And I would come in here and start, you know, flipping the switch for all of these, as I say, like that. All right, let's go beyond this because again, I feel like we need to take this up a notch. Okay, that's your intro. That's fun, whatever. It's like creates all this, some various JavaScript that we can look at later. Let me open up a more complex project that will hopefully impress you a little more. But I wanted this to be kind of an easy transition. Because now the rubber's meeting the road. We're like, okay, I've created this project now. Again, 40 years of technology and trends. Okay, and I've started to create like a div, basically a symbol for, you know, everywhere from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s to the 2010s. Okay, so this project got a lot more complex, but I'm inside of the 70s. Okay, so you can see it right in here. And again, I can make sure this keyframe, auto keyframe is turned on, and I can start to move my objects. But what am I doing? It's like I usually start with all my content in its final position. You know, that's how you end up designing. You're like, okay, here's the final screen, and everything kind of comes together. So what do? You import everything, you put everything in position, and then your first keyframe, you got to push everything off. And then you go in 2 seconds, and then you bring everything back. So you can see how there's that duplicate work. Now this is going to blow your mind because, or I should say it's going to be hard to wrap your mind around it because it's not in any animation software that exists today that I know of, okay? So it's not in After Effects. It wasn't in Flash. It's like animating in reverse, and it has to do with this pin tool. This pin tool will save your life as soon as you understand it. I just think it's really beneficial. Because again, these graphics, I want them to animate up and out, okay, but right now they're in their final position. Okay, so what I can what I can do, rather than going through that whole process that I mentioned, is I could use this pin tool. So I'm going to turn on this pin, clicking there, and it gives me this pin. And what this pin does is it says, hey, you know what? I'm going to pin the properties of this object to wherever this pin is, okay? So wherever I put that pin, that's where I want its size and position to be, okay? So again, I feel like I need to repeat that a couple times, but let's just show you how it works. I've turned on the toggle pin tool. I've moved that pin out there 1 second. Now watch what happens to this Polaroid. If I move it down, watch. It generates basically 2 keyframes. It generated the start position, which I just moved it to, but it says, hey, you know what? I didn't overwrite the original position. I just moved it down here, okay? And that's what it does. It just moved that content down there. So this makes it really easy if I take this and I'm saying, hey, you know what? Again, there's no keyframes here. This image, move it on down. Again, pin tool is activated. It generates those 2 keyframes. Oh, you want to rotate it? I can rotate it. It generates that rotate as well. Taking this object, the same thing, I can just start to play with this and it generates sort of all those keyframes. And I really like how that looks. Okay? So let's ease out and add a little back to it. But again, I just quickly created that animation by using that pin tool. So explore it. It kind of enables you to animate in reverse. And what you end up with, again, is something a little more advanced. As you can see here, that content slides out. And there's more things on that timeline that bounce out as well. And everything is scalable. Okay, so that's what I like. Using the pin tool for just making production of animations faster. All right. Okay, so we've gone into sort of your advanced animation, and if we take a look at this content now, I want to go into a little more depth with interactivity, because here I have this, this Polaroid. Well, let's make this Polaroid interactive, okay? So I want to make this Polaroid, when you click on it, it's going to play this timeline. Again, keeping this simple. I can select any object, say, hey, you know what? For this object, I want to give you basically an action. So I can right-click on it. I converted to symbol earlier, but I want to open up the actions for that Polaroid. Here's my actions. Gives me all of these actions. Click, double-click, everything you'd expect. Some jQuery, mouse enter, mouse leave stuff. Some touch events for mobile. And here I'm going to go ahead and select just click, okay? So it says on click, insert your code here for mouse click. So I can still use these same code snippets and just say play. And I could get more advanced if I want to, but I'm just adding play right there. So when you click on that Polaroid, it's going to play this timeline. Okay? And remember that I just used that code snippet. It really is just a blank canvas for me to write whatever JavaScript I want. But in here, as I roll over, I click, it plays that timeline and plays that animation. Since this is the 80s, that's my attempt at humor. Since the debate's going on, and this is the 80s, there's Barack Obama in like the 80s. Can you see him? That's awesome. And I couldn't find Mitt Romney, so I just used John Lovitz. Is that all right? No offense to anybody who loves it. Don't get me wrong. I just was playing around, making it relevant for you. So nonetheless, you can see how that content plays out. You click, it plays that timeline. That content just animates out. I have that sort of control. Okay, and you can go beyond that. There's other fun little things I might have. A TV does some things. You can click through that. It's all pretty straightforward. Even this wheel, check this out. Adding that custom animation, which I can show you in a second, that plays that timeline in reverse and then animates out the next sort of batch of content going into like the 90s. You can see that content, with flip phones, Yahoo, AOL, CD-ROMs. It's really interesting, like just kind of adding the assets for this, like how far we've come the past, 20 years. I mean, even the past 5 years is just crazy. So all of this was done with custom JavaScript, which you can add. In fact, if I take a look, rather than jumping around to these different parts in your timeline or on objects, you can go to Window, Code, and you can see the code available for this project. In fact, I'll click not only these certain triggers, I can see those triggers for those objects, but I can click on full code right over here. So I get, this is basically my Edge Actions JavaScript file. Okay, and right in here I can start to write anything that I want. I mean, I can just write any sort of JavaScript. But I have on-click date, request which index, which those are numbers that gets passed into it. You know, in here the date info array will be 0, 1, 2, 3, I think, and then we'll ultimately rotate the wheel, rotate the triangle to the right location, and then play that timeline. That it's all custom JavaScript that's written that you can add in here. Does that make sense? Okay. One more thing I'm going to show you, because I think I only have like 10 minutes. And actually, a couple more things. But again, writing JavaScript when I want to, using code snippets just to get familiar with it. There's APIs available that I can extend. I know people are working on CMSs that you can use with Edge Animate if you want to, just to make this content even more flexible. So you could have it as a designer, animating what you want to, and plug in some of that, some of those images or whatever could be linked to, say, a CMS. Going beyond that, again, let me just open up another example as we start to explore this whole theme.
What's the animation JavaScript, not CSS animations?
Well, I think it has CSS for some of the. The what? Oh. Okay. Gotcha. Why does it use JavaScript and not CSS? And I mean, I think it comes down to what's most widely available. It's like CSS, does still have some compatibility issues. So it does use CSS, like I pointed out earlier. So it uses CSS where it can. Otherwise, it's using JavaScript for a lot of the animation. So, yeah.
Has it to do with synchronize objects from one another, because CSS transitions and animations can be synchronized as far as I know, right?
Okay. Well, they can be synchronized, I guess. I don't know. We'll have to talk more about that. So ultimately, I mean, the big issue was compatibility, making sure it works across various browsers, and we know we reached some limitations with CSS, and that's where we had to kick in with JavaScript. Even like positioning. There's no, there's certain things in fact, as I start to roll over some of these objects, you can see that this is actually a JavaScript property that we're implementing. But if we start to take a look at the drop shadow or clipping, different things like that, that's going to be CSS related. So, yeah.
Is that masking?
Yeah.
Mask images and stuff?
The best way to do that is using clipping. If I wanted to have something pop up as if it's behind a window, it's that here's my visible box, which is your clipping box, if that makes sense.
Does it have to be a box that's
Yeah, you can't get into like advanced masking where I can draw something. And yeah, it's more a matter of turning on clipping right here and adjusting. See, watch how I can make part of it disappear. So I can start to animate this clipping if I want to, but this is starting to treat it like a mask. But it's not, but it's definitely what's available and will work pretty well. Other properties I didn't talk about, obviously we have shadow, we can adjust the cursor. Yeah, and there's even some accessibility options. Not quite, but we are working on that. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that publicly, but we're definitely working on, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Can you animate on a path? If you wanted a leaf to fall like that, can you draw a path and animate it? And we're working on that internally. Hopefully that's public knowledge, but if not, it is now, hey. So that's exactly what I want, you know, as a designer, is more firm, fine-grained control. So, and even beyond that, if you've used Flash, you're used to this flexibility. You might be used to, you know, certain, you know, frameworks or even, you know, tween engines. You know, I've used, say, GreenSock back in the day. In fact, if I close out some of these. But a lot of these frameworks that were being used in ActionScript are getting ported over to JavaScript, you know. And here's one where it's just, it's tweens. I don't know if you've heard of GreenSock, but, you know, using these tweening libraries. So here I have, and it could be any one of them, but here is, you know, say tween light, or I can use tween max. But in here, I can, this is the object. If I click tween, it'll animate to that, and it does it based on this these X and Y properties. So that's the way people started to animate. They started to animate things that are more complex with code. You know, it was ActionScript back in the day. Now all these libraries are getting converted to JavaScript. And I'm just pointing this out to say that you can use these certain libraries, any JavaScript library in Edge Animate as well. So, and that's what's going on here. If I take a look at this code, you know, say for instance, if you click on this car, when you click on that car, it uses tween max, which is that GreenSock library, and it scales it up. Okay, so it's going to start scaling up that whole board and moving it into position so that that car is being highlighted. So it animates that board, scales it up, and repositions it, okay, using that library, which is awfully nice. You know, and if you click on the board to go back, it's going to scale it back down to 30% its original size and reposition it back into place. But here I can use that library. I can run this. Again, on my desktop, if I click on that car, you can see it animates to it. I'll click back on that board, and it animates back. So you can see how, and again, this is a typical thing that you start seeing. I saw it a lot in Flash projects, but being able to navigate around, you know, a document or just creating a compelling experience like this is what I really like, and it's what first drew me to Flash. And that's all using that tween max library. But here's the cool thing as well, guys. Let me just show you this really fast. Because I briefly mentioned mobile. And if we take a look at this even on my iPad, if it's still running in the background here. Okay, so here's my iPad. It's that same page, and I want to show you, again, using some of these, I want to just show you performance. If I click on that car again, you can see how it animates up. And it might be kind of hard to tell on the projector, but overall, the performance is pretty darn good, being able to sort of create animation this way. So, again, touch events available. As I start to navigate through this content, you can see how that works. So again, I like this. I like creating this content. I like having this sort of control, using the timeline when I need it, and when I need to get into more of this interactive like space with where maybe properties are dynamically being generated based on position or whatever. I start to get into JavaScript, which at that point I can start writing what I want and using libraries that I want as well, as you can see that I've shown here. So that really is sort of your introduction to Edge Animate, everything going from your initial creation of an object or objects, as you saw there, getting into some more advanced animation with interactivity, and then showing you how to use some various libraries as well. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward, but you guys tell me. And I can go even beyond that because it's HTML, so it could be used anywhere where HTML is being used. Okay, so again, that's what I like, is being able to, put it anywhere you want. Again, I'm not selling anything. I'm just saying, hey, go buy it. You could, go buy it. Go get it. It's free. Go buy it. I'm not selling anything, but you can go buy it. No, you couldn't buy. If you wanted us to give us money, we couldn't take it. It's free. It really is. And it's the 1.0 version. So it's not like, say, Creative Cloud. It's like you sign up, and then you have this membership, and if you stop your membership, you no longer have access to that stuff. That's not how this is set up. It's like you download 1.0 today, and you can own it indefinitely. And it's really our gift to you guys. It's largely driven by the community, Edge Animate. So yeah, guys, hopefully it makes your life easier. At the very least, open up your own HTML file in there and add some interactivity to it as well. Again, you can either go to that URL or creativecloud.com. There's my email address. And also, we're hiring. Probably just like a lot of people have said today. Hey, we're hiring. So that's really good to hear that. In today's market, it's cool to hear, hey, you know what, we're hiring. It's a great place to work. All right, so that's all I have for you guys. I'm done. Thank you for that.